Well, welcome back, friends. I see you've been chatting as been getting ready to start. I love when people come back for the second time. I see that Jeannie Henry's here tonight and Jane Deal, who won a prize. Speaking of prizes, we're going to give away 4 tonight. So you want to make sure you're commenting there and telling everybody where you're listening in from and maybe your home church. Love to see Christina Fox and Lisa Tarpley and Robin Stevens is coming in from Rainy, Mississippi, she says. Those 3 are a great pair there. Um, we're going to get a chance to talk to some amazing people tonight. I've just gotten a chance to get to know them right before we came on the broadcast. But you know this person. Her name's Susan Tyner. She's become one of your favorite people as you've been doing What's She Doing Here. So, Susan, welcome back.
Hello, Karen. Welcome to my office upstairs in Fort Worth, Texas.
Yeah, we're so happy to see you again tonight. And tonight we're going to do the title of tonight is Beauty in the Midst of a Mess. Now, I don't know what you're looking out at your house tonight. Maybe there's a mess. I mean, both of us kind of have a mess outside this shot that you're seeing right now. And so, listen, just exhale. You're among friends. We all know what that looks like. But we're going to talk tonight a little bit about what it looks like for God to create something that's magnificent in the midst of a mess, to see the beauty in the midst of brokenness. And I think it was probably 4 or 5 years ago, Susan Tyner and I were at a gathering of directors of women's ministries. The name of that group was Doms Forever, which I kept thinking they need a better name. Susan's a part of that group. She's part of my team that helps plan those gatherings. And Susan was sharing a devotional, and she introduced an artistic concept that has stayed with me. It's called kintsugi. Kintsugi. Do you remember that, Susan?
Yes, I came across this somewhere and I don't remember, but it was fascinating. Um, it's the art of taking broken items and putting them together, and where the cracks are, you fill in with gold. So the overall effect after it's finished is this beautiful design of gold work. And you can see in that photo, just the pattern of gold where the cracks are is just beautiful. And so that just kind of just captures what God does with us, in that we look at broken dishes and think, how can that ever be used again? And God takes a broken dish and puts it together, and we just see the gold and the beautiful pattern and design, and it becomes a thing of art, and it honestly glorifies God. I have a sister that is extremely creative, and one time I went to her house and she had broken a giant piece of pottery. And instead of throwing it away, she hung it on the wall, and it was art. And so people that do the gold in cracks and people who hang up broken pieces and make them art, I feel like just really show us what God does with our broken messes.
Yeah, and our tendency might be to just, like you said, sweep it into the trash can. But it can be repurposed, it can be restored, it can be remade into something that tells a story about something that was broken and became beautiful. Well, one of the things I'd love for you to do tonight in the chat section is maybe tell us a little bit about maybe the most beautiful creation you've ever had a part in your life. Maybe it was something artistic. Maybe it was something in your garden. Maybe it was something on your kitchen table. Maybe it's someone in your family you've had, or a story, but just a way that you've seen God do something majestic in the midst of a mess. And we want to celebrate that tonight. We're going to pick 4 winners tonight to give away some beautiful pieces of art, as well as a few other little fun things. But I want you to go ahead and meet tonight 2 of our special guests. The first one we have tonight is Susan Woodard Kelly. And if you've been gazing at the front cover of your book, you have been looking at a replication of part of her art that Susan's going to tell the story about. So welcome, Susan. We're so glad to have you tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, tell everybody a little bit about who you are, where you live, and maybe how you got started in doing. I found out she's like omnicompetent artistically and creatively. So any part of that you want to talk about, we'd love to hear about.
Oh, sure. Well, I was born in Mississippi in the same town that Susan Tyner is from. So I've known Susan forever. I'm a little younger than she is, and I always looked up to her. She was a cheerleader and a homecoming maid. And so I can remember sitting at little pep rallies and just looking at the big girls. And I think still today, I kind of consider her my big sister. Um, I'm so thankful for her wisdom and her light in my life. I have been making art just always. It was something that the Lord kind of gifted me with in a moment when I was 8 years old, like a fiat. I just knew this is what I do. And to be honest, I don't do very much else well. So I've tried to run away from it. I've tried to do other things. I think I majored in interior design for a couple of years in college. And even those professors told me, like, this is just, you're not that good at this. You're very creative and you need to study art. My mom told me. So I'm sure there's a really good biblical metaphor there that I kept trying to run away from the thing that God gave me as a gift to do. But in and out and on and off since being 8 years old, I've made art and studied it and did a master's of fine art, which is where I studied at Ole Miss while in Oxford, Mississippi, while Susan was there. And that's when we really kind of reconnected as adults and became really great friends. And I was at her Bible studies and at her house and babysitting her kids and just really loved that family so much. And that's also the period of time, it was 20 years ago. So I'm not making a lot of that same work today, but that is when I made that piece that she has in her house. And today I'm a portrait artist. I love to find time to make experimental pieces, but I don't have much of it because every day I am going into my studio and painting portraits of mostly children, families. I paint about 250 a year, so I'm doing that
Wow.
most of my time. It's a
You're a
full-time job.
you're a busy lady for sure. Well, speaking of that piece of art, I told Susan she could be Vanna White tonight. It's sitting behind her. So I don't know. I know it, you have to do the opposite of what you think. There you go. All right. And Susan Tyner, why don't you comment on why that's special and why that's hanging in your house? And then we're going to let the artist actually tell us about the artwork. But I want to hear from you first.
Well, so I definitely wanted Susan to do something on the cover. And so we were talking about it, and I was sitting where this usually hangs is in my living room downstairs. And I think I was actually like having my morning devotional, and I just look up and go, that's the painting I want. Look at all the women in it. And I don't know if you can see it on the screen, but like there's a woman there, there's her lips and her chin. There are all these different silhouettes of women, figures. And then if you look right there, that little girl right there, she's the one that's the main thing you see on the cover. So I took that framed art, took it to someone, and we took it out of the frame and scanned it all with Susan's permission. And she just was very generous to let it's kind of like if the book is the baby, she let me pick her smocked dress for the book to wear. I mean, it just made it so great for me to feel like it was representative of kind of the art I love. And so she was really generous to share it with us.
Absolutely, you were incredibly generous. And a smock dress, I mean, that's like top shelf in the South, right? I mean, I don't know if there's a higher level, right? A higher compliment you could give somebody, right, Susan Tyner? Well, Susan Woodard Kelly, why don't you tell us a little bit, if you can remember, you said it was 20 years ago, like what inspired you when you did that piece? Can you
It was.
remember?
I was sitting here, I'm trying hard. I did. I mean, one thing I remember in that time when I was making that work, I would never start with an idea. It was like I made a mess, honestly. I throw paint down and move stuff around and turn it upside down and create shapes that made no sense. And I built out of abstraction and experimentation and strange mark making. I made sense. The way I resolved the piece of art was by making sense out of the chaos. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed um, having that sort of distance between what the end finished piece of art resolved piece would be in the not knowing. And it didn't always, I mean, some of it wasn't any good, but um, I just found that like the more I could let go, the more beautiful things could happen. And I was probably 20, 44, I was 25 or so at the time. And I was not getting what I wanted in life. I wanted at that time in my life to get married and have children like all of my friends were doing. And it was not happening for me. And it didn't happen for me for almost another 10 years. And I struggled with, why, who am I? And as a woman, what am I doing? Why am I here? It's kind of like I'm not getting my first choice here. And I think I worked some of that out artistically. Um, at that time, I was definitely more of an emotional art, artist. Abstract expressionism is kind of a working from an emotional place, which is what I did a lot of then. And it was a really wonderful way to get into my studio and sort of commune with God and work through his story in my life and use the gifts he had given me to work that out and to bless others.
Well, I love so many things that you said, Susan, that we can just tease out and apply to our own life. Just the idea of imaging God where there's maybe chaos or an abstract kind of thought and bringing order and bringing beauty and you imaging him in that way. And just even the uncertainty of your story and how that's kind of the backdrop of what we're looking at. And of course, when I looked at it, and I don't know, are we allowed to interpret it for ourselves? I don't know. Is that allowed? Yes. So when I looked at it and Susan sent it to me, I thought every woman could see herself in that painting, no matter where she was. And there's different kinds of shapes, and some are more pronounced, and then some are more subtle in the background. And when I think about the context of community, even at church, and I think about women gathering together, seeing the contrast, um, that picture just spoke to me in that there's all kinds of women, and we can all identify with that. Well, I'd love to ask you another question. How have you seen church communities incorporating art into their ministry there in the church? I know several churches in the PCA really hold it in high regard, and they make space for it in their facilities.
Oh yeah, I love that. I've been part of several. I've moved a lot, so I've been part of several churches where we've had really great art shows. We did at the church I go to had really cool stations of the cross where each person took a station and artistically interpreted it and kind of built a little prayer service during Holy Week for that. I love seeing that. I love one church I went to did art therapy as a ministry to the homeless, and so that was really special,
Wow.
special to be a part of. Um, and then I loved Christ the King, where Eden goes to church. Really embraced. Today still does. I hope I haven't been there. I haven't been to Oxford in a long time, but they really embraced my gifts and let me paint murals all over the wall of the church. And I think it's moved. I know it's moved, but I think they took some of the murals there or paintings they took with them. So that was a real blessing that as an artist, I feel welcomed and embraced at most all of the church communities I've been a part of and asked to in some way bless the congregation there with my gifts.
I love that because it really helps us be known and be able to use our gifts to the glory of God. And yet my guess is that there was a lot of conversations, a lot of relational groundwork that was laid before something like that happened in all those churches. Because sometimes we don't see those gifts right when we come in the door. And speaking of somebody coming in the door, we have Eden Flora, who is one of Susan's other artist friends. I mean, you're just so blessed, Susan. Welcome, Eden. She's coming from us from Oxford, Mississippi. That's your heart home, right, Susan Tyner?
Oh, absolutely.
Yep. How do
Hi,
you know
yeah.
Eden?
I know Eden. Well, I met her in Oxford. in Mississippi, you pretty much know someone else you just met knows. So we connected those dots. And also, all three of us have a special love for Camp DeSoto. We've either camped or worked there. And so I had heard about Eden from a mutual friend from camp. And she just like Susan Woodard, Eden is like one of my special friends. I think that when I see how they incorporate their gifts and their faith together, it's just fun for me to hang out with them, and I feel inspired, and I just love them both. So it means a lot that they both would take the time to do this.
Yeah, Susan really wanted to have a rolling party tonight. She would have loved it if we could have all just been together in Fort Worth, sitting there around her table. So, Eden, I'd love to, for everybody to know a little bit about who you are, where you live, and maybe how you got started in doing what you do.
Yes, so I am Eden, Flora, and I live in Mississippi, though I'm originally from Alabama. And the majority of my time, I work as an artist where I sell my work on my website. And additionally, I'm a registered art therapist. So I work in an adolescent rehab with boys, using art therapy as a healing tool there. And yeah, I'm a very creative person, but I'm also very organized. So sometimes I'm like, I don't look enough like an artist. I'm too uptight. Like I'm not a easy breezy kind of artist, but there are many artists I've had to just embrace. Like, you're an organized artist, and that is okay. And in fact, my process, like when I'm painting, or especially when I'm sketching, that's when I'm like, look at you tolerating mess. Look at your mess. So creating helps me kind of recognize and own I'm a messy person, and I can't have it all together because I'm a sinner. So
Yeah, no, that's a great spiritual principle there. But organized artists get things done, and they get things to their clients, and I know
we
they
do.
appreciate that. So, we'd love to know tonight how you've grown in your understanding of what it means to image. We've been talking about imaging the Creator God as you seek to create beautiful pieces, for the people, maybe your clients, and for the people that you love, like Susan and other people.
So that's an exciting question. When I am creating art, the thing, like what I really love to do and the artwork that I love to make is seeking to learn about God. I'll feel like maybe there's a verse or a sermon I heard or a conversation I had with a friend, and I'll get really taken with some kind of concept. And because I'm an experiential learner, it's much more meaningful for me to take a concept like that and then go wrestle with it and create some art about it rather than maybe just reading about it or talking about it. That piece of experience of creating the art takes it one step further for me. So when I'm making artwork that I really love, it's because I want to learn about God. And then the second piece of that is wanting to teach people about what I
Mm.
learned. So I think it's been very exciting for me to, be able to start to put words to that of what I'm doing, is, taking a concept and trying to make it into, a concept about God. Like in the winter, I did a series of work about God's omniscience, which is a hard concept. And so just trying to create like a visual image for that. And it serves as a reminder to someone when they see that painting to think, oh, it's kind of an invitation to think again about like, this is what God's omniscience is, and this is what it means to me, and this is what it looks like in my life. So as I do that more and more, I learn more about who God is and get to share about who He is. If that answers the question.
You answered it beautifully. And as I looked at your work on your website, I think that's a great way to think about it. It causes you to consider, but then it leads you to worship, which is that's where you want it to go. And so I saw so many meaningful things in your artwork. Another question we'd love to ask you tonight is, how do you think the church can cultivate a richer community around the word by including both beauty and creativity?
I think sometimes churches can be like too down on themselves, thinking we don't know how to appreciate or invite enough art in, or maybe we don't have a huge community of artists. And so I think it's really important for us in our churches to broaden the term of creativity, because in the Bible we know that we are made in God's image and God is a creator. So if we're made in his image, then we are creators, obviously with a little c. But if you think about our bodies, like we have immune systems that create cells to heal us, or our fingernails create and grow, or our hair grows, or as women our bodies can create humans. So I think that it could really help us in our churches to realize, like, everyone has God's fingerprint on us and on each of us. And so, we maybe create in very different ways. Maybe somebody creates spreadsheets, or they create order in their home by cleaning, or they're a cook. But I think about, how exciting it would be, because obviously I'm a visual artist, but it would be so exciting for me to talk about maybe whatever it is I'm trying to create, um, and talk about that with a variety of creators, to go with my metaphor there. So, like, for instance, the pieces behind me are all about Matthew 11, where Jesus calls us to come to him. And so that's this idea that I've really been able to search out. But I think, how exciting would it have been if I could have been in like a small group where we we started talking about that verse, and people's an engineer speaking about that verse in one way, or someone who's a cook, or all the different kinds of creators. I think it doesn't have to just be a bunch of visual artists, even though that's awesome if you can do that, but sometimes visual artists are hard to come by. So I think that churches can be encouraged to know that God has provided so many different kinds of creators in their church. So you could kind of step into the arts more quickly when you see like everybody has something to add.
I you actually elevated the idea of creativity in a way that I hadn't thought about it. In other words, we can appreciate that in one another in so many different ways. And you also really embodied the idea of what we're trying to do in the summer Bible study, that we is better than me. In other words, we need the perspectives of all kinds of people. We need to study the content of the gospel in the context of community, because everyone's wearing different kinds of glasses from different kinds of experiences, and we can learn from one another. And so, and art is one of the ways that we can begin to see things perhaps from a different perspective, or visualize in a way that we had never actually thought. I'd love to ask both you and Susan, as we wrap up, how have you seen God create beauty in the midst of a mess in your own life? And I know we just got to know one another tonight, so that's kind of a big question to ask, a bold question to ask. But if you would tonight, I know it would encourage the women who are listening.
I could
Um,
definitely speak to that. Oh, Susan and I are both willing and ready. We're like,
I
let us
tell you
tell you
guys, you
about our
both jumped on it.
mess.
Go, you go for it, Susan. You go first.
well, I was my quick fast answer is like I think it happens every day. I pretty much feel like I start with um, there's a lot of like I wake up, I on a good day seek the Lord through spending time with Him, and then it starts. The chaos begins. I have two children. I try to make a goal of making a painting every day. Um, I mean, it just feels real, genuinely messy up in my house. And I kind of am amazed at the end of the day how he has carried me through. Somehow I have finished a painting. My kids have successfully gone to school and come home. And um, there's some dinner on the table. I, I, I just think that's a small miracle that that process happens my, in a micro sense in my life almost every day. And even in that little micro bubble of that process, there's so many small miracles that I enjoy in my garden and with my family.
Sounds like it really cultivates a thankful heart. In other words, sometimes we're in the midst of the mess and we can't necessarily rejoice or be thankful. But maybe as we look at the end of the day, we can say, God did this and he made something beautiful in the midst of a mess. That's a great reminder, because I think that's where most of us live. That's the GPS coordinates where most of us live. How about you, Eden?
I'll be very true to myself and speak in a very detail oriented way. But I can really struggle. I really struggle with self reliance instead of God reliance. So I will kind of be like, I don't want any mess. And it's really hard because I have a 1 year old and a 4 year old. And I'm like, you know what? If I just work hard enough, I can eradicate all this mess. And I feel like the Holy Spirit has been so loving to just draw me in and be like, that is not a freeing way to live. And I had told Susan Tyner this recently. But I can often not treat Jesus like a friend and feel like, oh, I need to really, clean up and get myself together before I go saddle up next to Jesus. And, Jesus, quoting that book, Gentle and Lowly, he doesn't love me for my loveliness. He loves me for my unloveliness. And so I have loved feeling called by God to know, I want you in your mess. You are a mess, and I want you to come in your mess to me. And so that is something that I've just felt so loved by God recently, to be reminded of over and over again, to just come to him as I am, and not because I'm not going to succeed eradicating the mess. And so instead, I'm just going to, live in that self-reliance very insularly apart from God. And so God is saying, that's not going to work out. And I want you to be with me and live in the freedom with me in your mess. So I've been very thankful for that, and the way that the study is just digging deeper and deeper into that idea for me.
You bring out another great point, Eden, that God sees the big picture. He sees the portrait that he's painting. He's painted us into it. He understands how it's all going to unfold. And so he can look into what looks like a mess and see that this is part of what he's creating. And we get those gospel glimpses every day. Maybe it's when you're picking up Cheerios off the floor, or you're stepping over a bunch of dirty socks on the floor, that we can say, Lord, bless this mess. I'm thankful that you're present in the middle of it. Well, Eden and Susan, thank you so much for being with us tonight. You have been a tremendous gift to us. We've loved having you. I know you're going to want to get a chance to be able to connect to Susan and Eden's work. We're going to put up their website here in just a second, and you're going to see 2 different things that we're going to give away here in just a second. I'm going to grab my phone and see if we've got some winners here. We've got 2 giveaways from Eden. We got one of her coffee mugs. If you go on her website there, and I'll put this up on the Facebook page as well, she's got everything from prints to tea towels to note cards to coffee mugs. And then Susan Woodard's website is there, and she's got some beautiful note cards that we're going to give away. And we've got 4 winners tonight. So I'm going to tell you who's going to win the coffee mug. Tina Matters is going to win the coffee mug. We'll get your address. Tina will reach out to you and make sure that we can get that to you in the mail. And Patsy Kuipers, who I think is pretty cool. We've been talking about gardening tonight. Patsy Kuipers, you're going to get a chance to win Susan's note cards. And then I've got 2 more gifts because, listen, I was a first grade school teacher, so art is like stick people and Crayola markers for me. So I aspire to be like Susan and Eden. But every week I try to give myself just a few minutes to try to create something. And so let me grab it real quick. I love myself a good journal, a bullet journal. And what I try to do every week is sit down, write out some prayers, write out some ideas, write out some thoughts. And then I do it with the best kind of markers. And so we're going to send out 2 sets of a bullet journal and markers. And they're going to go to Natalia Linder and Marie Berger. Those are going to be in the mail to you this week. So look for those. Susan, any concluding thoughts? I mean, you got to have some of your favorite people on tonight. So you get one of the last words on what you thought about what they said.
Oh, my cup is full just seeing their faces. I love when my new good friends meet my old good friends, and that's what happened tonight. And I don't know. I just know that both of these women have seen me at my messy moments. And honestly, when they have shared their messy moments with me, I've felt a lot of honor in that. So I would encourage our listeners not to be scared of the messy. Let that gold in the cracks do God's name good and how he does that in our lives.
That's great. Well, we've been hearing from so many of you that you're getting so much out of the study. Thanks for sending in those comments. And several times we've gotten some questions like, can I keep like, I'm enjoying this so much. Can I go slower than the 8 weeks? I want to take the rest of the summer. Listen, you take as long as you want to marinate in God's word, right? We're looking forward to coming back on July the 6th. We're going to have Vanessa Hawkins. Many of you know Vanessa. She's going to be talking to Susan and I about the beauty and the blessing of belonging. What does it look like to belong? We'll be focusing on those chapters that surround Ruth. We've loved having you here tonight. In fact, Susan, I think your brother was here tonight. He might have been the only guy on the thread. So wave to your brother.
Thank you, Puffer. He's another creative soul.
Well, he seemed to be, I mean, I just noticed out of the corner of my eye that he was chatting with some of the women in the thread and that he made it on. So kudos to you, Puffer, for being, brave enough to come on a live stream with a bunch of women and your sister. So anyway, we've had fun tonight. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back on July the 6th, and may God bless you as you continue in your studies of what she's doing here.